I was like, Mom, I met this girl and I really like her. And she's like, oh, that's great. And I was like, she has a husband. And she's like, that's less great.
I knew I was going to cry
Yeah,
during this.
I know.
There's so much emotion in our story. Goodness
I know.
gracious. And I cannot.
Yeah, this is just the beginning.
Yeah, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you're barely committed to me and you're talking about marriage? The most unsatisfying kiss. My peach is growing. My peach is growing.
Welcome.
Hello.
For those of you who can't see, we are in our Carl and Ellie chairs,
That's fun.
which is from the Pixar movie Up, which
Good
is
one.
known to rip your heart out and throw it across the room.
Decimate it.
It's in the first 10 minutes. It has to be the saddest. I think it's the saddest first 10 minutes of any movie
Do you
that I've
remember
ever seen.
during COVID when the six of us in our old apartment just sat in the living room and only watched the first 10 minutes
you
of
bet.
Up? Was someone like, hey, who wants to watch? Someone want to watch the first 10 minutes of Up? And then we just sat there and we were all sobbing.
Sob crying. I will cry every single time. I don't think I've watched it one time without crying.
That sequence is really well done.
Every time. I think it's something about old people too that
Oh
gets
gosh.
me. Old people.
Don't even get me started.
Like old people that are just so in love with each other.
I would agree.
Gets me like if I'm walking in a mall and I see two old people holding hands, like that is enough for me to just be like
Old people in general. I can see one old person alone.
yeah.
And I'm like, my mind starts writing stories about their life and like I wonder
Absolutely.
if they lost their spouse or you know, it's just like coming up with stories. Old people they're so great. We can learn so much from them also.
I know, it's true. So much wisdom.
So much wisdom.
Is there another scene that's sadder?
I don't think so. I mean, I can't think of anything off the top of my
I can't
head.
think of anything that makes me cry more.
Yeah.
I cried pretty hard in Green Mile, at the end of Green Mile. I cried a good amount at
Yeah.
that one.
That movie's really
But
good.
I mean, Coco made me.
Definitely you were weeping
really
in Coco
sad.
for sure.
But that was also the same.
Yeah.
I mean, my grandma
You also
just died.
just lost your grandma.
Yeah, so
It was a
the
timing thing.
circumstances, it was definitely a timing thing.
Yeah.
In
I
theaters,
was like, concerned for you in that one because it was like the credits were rolling
Yeah.
and you were still crying.
I was in theaters and I was just like, you know how you're trying to contain yourself, but you're just shaking
Yeah.
from crying.
I
Like I was weeping.
I don't really try to contain myself.
No,
I just
but you're a very
let it out.
like eloquent. That's not the right word.
elegant,
Yeah,
maybe.
elegant. You're a very elegant crier.
Thank you. That's good because I cry frequently.
You do a good amount. You probably will during this.
Most likely I will.
Yeah.
Maybe more than once.
Oh,
We'll see.
that's fun. So
Let's start at the very beginning.
it's a good
Very good place
to start. Oh,
Wow, you don't know the words
no,
well.
I don't know the song.
Oh, you don't?
No.
From
What is
Sound of
that?
Music.
Oh, I do not.
That's
not
Do
know that
Re
show.
Mi.
Yeah, I don't know that show.
Oh my gosh, Micah.
Aren't there Nazis in it?
Yes, there are.
So I
Nazis.
can't support that.
It's not pro-Nazi.
I can't believe you
It's
bring up something like that.
Stop. Quit it.
All right, so the beginning of our
The
story.
beginning.
Huh?
Starting at the very beginning.
It's a very good place to start. Is that right?
Ish. Close. Kind of. Julie understood it a little better though.
Doubtful. Just kidding, Julie.
You're watching.
So we met performing, actually. That's a good segue.
Mm-hmm.
Doing on the national tour of Beauty and the Beast.
Mm-hmm. Fun times.
That was a
Fun times.
very, very fun times.
Yeah, it was.
That's what brought us out to New York. I'm from Wisconsin originally. She's from Kansas. I know. I'm from Wisconsin originally. She's from Kansas. We both moved out here to New York to pursue performing, and that's how we met on the Beauty and the Beast national tour, which we both almost didn't do.
This is true.
I turned it down initially, and then they came back and
that's
offered
crazy.
me
I forget about that.
the understudy of Beast and Gaston, and then I took it. And you almost didn't take
Yeah,
it because
just because I had a whole life going on.
yeah,
I didn't really want to
and you-
interrupt my life for a
well,
year.
and you just came back off of a cruise.
I mean, not just.
No?
No, it had been a year of time.
Oh, I thought you had I thought you were just like, I don't want to go and travel a whole.
In that year since the cruise, I had like established a life in New York.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I just wanted to like continue auditioning here and do stuff here and
But
work
then
my
you-
way up the ladder here.
But then you took it. So what made
But
you
then I
take
took it. Ultimately, I was just like, well, I want to do a show.
Yeah.
And this is a decently long contract, which doesn't always happen in musical theater, or you just don't know how long it's going to be. And it was something where it was like set money for a certain amount of time. I could plan financially. And I was also just, you know, when it got down to it, I didn't want to work the 3 jobs I was working at the time. I would have rather done the show than work those 3 jobs. It was more the relationships that were preventing me from wanting to go on the tour than anything else.
Right. But then you did.
But then I did.
And then we didn't say a word to each other.
No. So we didn't actually meet. We were just in the same room.
Yeah, we did
on
all
end.
of rehearsal, all of tech. Well, not all of tech, most of tech. And without saying anything to each other.
Yeah.
Like lunches, all the stuff. Like for the cast would go out on lunch, and I would go and hang out, and she would go by herself.
I would leave and have lunch alone. I would literally exit the building and go have lunch by myself.
Yeah, you're very
because
you kind of isolated.
Yeah, well,
yourself.
I was just like, number 1, I'm very introverted. Number 2, musical theater people are a lot.
I feel like most people would not think that you're introverted though when they meet you.
Yeah, but I am. I love people. But I'm introverted.
Yeah. But you're extroverted when you're with people that you're comfortable with.
Yes.
So
but anyway, so I would leave and I would have lunch alone. Because I was like, I'm gonna be traveling the country with these people for 10 months. Yeah. We're gonna have plenty of time together. I don't need it to start yet. Yeah. I have a whole life going on here.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you later.
Right.
And I wasn't trying to be mean. I don't know. It's like, it sounds kind of mean. It sounds kind of rude when I say it out loud. But it really was just like, I know I'm going to get to know these people and I'm going to build a relationship with these people.
Right.
But right now I just
want you would have 10 months of constant like time with everybody.
Right.
So, I mean, bus rides, hours and hours of bus rides and hours and hours of plane rides.
We bonded plenty.
Oh, yeah.
I loved everyone on that tour.
Yeah.
Everyone
was fun.
Was great. Like that tour was full of wonderful humans that we were able to spend time with.
So
but we didn't speak.
For quite some time. All. Yeah, she was actually the last person that I said any words to. I talked to, I think, everybody on the cast except for her.
I'm sure that's the same for me as well.
I think so too.
That's funny.
Yeah, why did that happen?
We literally stood next to each other in some numbers and we never even said a word to each other.
Was that like God protecting us or something? Because so after that, it goes rehearsals and then tech. And for those of you who don't know, in theater, there's a tech where we get to
everything
rehearse
comes together
with everything, like
lights,
props, costumes, everything. Because before that, we're just kind of rehearsing in a room,
just a room
with like tape on the ground, literally tape on the ground.
Yeah, no set pieces or anything.
And so tech happens, and that's kind of like the final thing before our first performance. Yeah. And then what happened? Right? That happened during tech?
Happened during tech.
So then during tech, her brother passes away and then she leaves. And this is still before we said any words to each other.
Yeah. I was only gone for 2 weeks.
For 2 weeks?
Yeah. I was gone for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Which was most of tech, right?
It was. I was there at the beginning of tech, I was there. And then I was gone. I missed some of the first previews. I came back. Actually, I think I missed the technical opening. Actually.
So then that happened. You went home. Your brother passed away. And was there was an instant where you thought he wasn't going to, or right, or something like that?
I mean,
or no?
it was a little up and down, but he was basically like in a coma when I went home, and they were pretty sure that he had been without oxygen to his brain for too long. So they were pretty sure that he wasn't gonna wake up.
Yeah.
So that was a whole thing.
Yeah.
I would not wish that upon anyone.
Yeah.
That was a very traumatic experience.
Right.
As is losing anyone.
Right.
But when you have the up and down of like, maybe I will lose this person, maybe I won't. And then you lose them right before your eyes. Like, that's hard.
Yeah, of course.
I knew I was going to cry during this. There's so much emotion in our story. Goodness gracious. And I cannot.
Yeah, this is just the beginning too. Yeah, like, wait, it doesn't count unless they drop.
If it doesn't
drip.
If it doesn't count.
Right. So for those of you who are wondering,
I feel like it's definitely going to drip.
If it doesn't come down the cheek, it doesn't actually count. Which I think you might lose this one. You lost it.
It's dripping.
You lost it. Okay.
But anyway, so yeah, that was
so then
what
was it?
2 weeks.
What was it like coming back? Like that happened, which is a pretty traumatic event that happens, and then you come back into an environment where you don't know anyone really.
Yeah.
and nobody that you're really close to, you come back and you're like, this is, I'm going to have to be with these people for the next 10 months.
Yeah.
So was it hard, or was it kind of like almost a blessing because it was kind of a distraction? Or
I think more of that one. I think it was hard because I am such a introverted person by nature.
Yeah.
So the fact that I didn't have any of my like close connections near me to lean on was hard.
Yeah.
But I also think that it was a blessing.
Yeah.
Because it was a huge distraction. And I think it actually, in the sense of that, I think it was a healthy distraction because it gave me something to do that I was excited about doing. And because I didn't have anyone to like kind of externally go through things with, although I'm not really that kind of person anyway. I'm very much an internal processor. Basically just went through my grief with God versus with anyone. To me, it felt, and what do I know? I don't know anything, but it felt like a very healthy way to process that grief because I journaled. You have seen the journal that I have from tour. And
maybe we have to go through your journal at some point in a podcast.
I don't think so. That would be so embarrassing. But it is cool to look back on.
Well, we can tell you guys maybe some of the things that she said.
I doubt it.
Like Micah's so cute. Anyway.
So cute. But it is cool to look back at some of the things. Like I would write down my prayers, and it's cool to look back at some of the things that I was praying for, or like the help I was asking God for, and the ways that I saw him come through, the way that he answered those prayers, or the ways that he showed up with the ways I was asking him to help me and guide me. So that's cool documentation to have.
I think grief looks different for everyone though. I don't know. Is there a wrong way to grieve?
No, I don't think so. I mean, obviously you can do things that are more healthy than others. But not necessarily. Again, I'm not an expert, but I think it's whatever helps us to acknowledge it and feel it, not stuff it down. But to also still be able to go about our life. And it's interesting because I remember, I think I wrote this down in my journal as well, remember being like, I actually feel happy most days. And I feel guilty that I feel happy most days. Because shouldn't I not be happy most days?
That's interesting.
And then I was just thankful. Because I was like, well, thank goodness that's how I'm wired. To just like trend positive. And to trend hopeful, and to have my thoughts be hopeful thoughts about what was coming in the future, or what, it was a difficult situation, but I knew that I was going to be okay. And that, because grief doesn't ever go away, in my opinion. It lessens, but it never disappears completely.
Sure.
There's always a piece of your heart that's impacted when you lose someone and you're grieving something, in my opinion, again.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I knew it would never go away completely, but I knew that I was going to be okay.
So that happens. You come back.
That happens. Came back.
And our first words that we said to each other.
Your first words that you said to me.
It was her first date back, and you were walking down the hall, and I was about to pass you, and this was the first time I came, I guess, close enough to even say a word to you. So we passed each other, and I said, glad to have you back.
Yeah, something like that.
Something of that nature.
And I just said, thanks so much. Like, we just continued on our way.
Mm-hmm. And so then we didn't speak again.
No. It was maybe weeks, because I came back in October.
Oh, okay. So, a couple weeks later.
Yeah.
We are in the Villages, which is in Florida, which, for those of you who don't know the Villages, it's basically a retirement Disney. It's Disney World for retirement people.
Funniest place.
It's the wildest place.
We had fun.
We had a blast. Everybody drives around in golf carts, and
there's like different themed areas.
Yes, there is.
Like Western area, or like that's the only one I really distinctly remember is like the Western themed
And there's a water.
area.
There was a water one too. I think
There's
a Western one. There's a water one. It's
a very
bizarre,
unique,
but
unique situation.
It was a blast. We had a good time.
Yeah.
And so there was a time where the entire cast went out to a bar, and there's this huge table that like everyone sat at, and we all sat down, and there was only one seat left.
Only one seat open when I got there.
And it was by me, and Sarah came and had to sit by me because it was the only option.
Yeah.
So that was the first time that we really actually had a conversation.
Yeah.
And as soon as we did, we just like hit it off.
Yeah.
And it was so easy. And I just remember being like, oh my gosh, this person is like so down to earth and so attractive. And we shared food.
We did share food
immediately.
I do remember that.
So, that's a big deal.
I felt like it felt like we had been friends for ages.
Yeah.
Like it was just very comfortable
easy.
right off the bat.
And so that was fun.
And then didn't we ride golf carts?
Yeah, we rode golf carts.
Yeah, that was fun.
Courts. I just don't know where the accent is. Yeah, we rode golf carts. Oh, why can't I say that word? Golf carts. Golf carts. Yeah. We rode golf carts. And from that point on, I was like, I have my person. I have my friend. For me, I was catching feelings pretty early on, like very, very soon. The only problem was at the time, Sarah had a husband.
Yeah. So I was not catching any feelings.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, great. This is awesome. Like, I think I have a lot in common with this guy. He's going to be a great friend. I'm excited to get to know him more.
This straight single guy is going to be my bestie. That's going to work out well. So that was kind of like frustrating for me, to be honest, because I was like, I'm annoyed at myself. This was a trend in my life. I would be attracted and like women that always was with somebody. They were either with they had boyfriends or whatever, and it was a bad. Was I
the first one who had a husband?
It was. Yeah, first one that had a husband. So it was very much like, okay, like this can't happen.
It's a definite no.
Nothing. Yeah, definite no.
Yeah.
I remember calling my mom. I was like, Mom, I met this girl and I really like her, and she's like, oh, that's great. And I was like, she has a husband, and she's like, that's less great. She's like,
ideal.
well, I mean, there's nothing much you can do about that. So that was that. And I just had to kind of stuff my feelings, and because I was just like, like, there's literally no way that this can happen unless something happened. And so the sequence of events, we didn't say a word to each other. Her brother passes. She comes back. We hit it off. And a month after her brother passes.
It was in January. My brother passed at the end of September.
Oh, so it was a couple months later.
It was a few months later. I think
couple
it was
months later.
3
well,
months.
You tell that
3
story.
3 months later. My husband at the time comes to visit and it's like, see the show on tour. And then tells me that he's gay. So that was such an interesting thing to go through. Yeah. When I reflect back upon it. It's so many dynamics there.
It worked out for me.
It worked out for everyone. Yeah. But yeah, it was
the most ideal situation for me. I mean, like because I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it would have been way worse if he like cheated on you with a girl, right?
I guess.
Definitely.
I mean,
he just like doesn't like her kind.
Right.
So like that's like kind of easy.
Yeah. If he had been honest with me, then I would have been like, well, I have to like something that maybe we can work on. Like it would have just created a completely different dynamics.
Yeah, way harder.
Pretty much anything else would have been like, yeah, but we committed to each other, so we have to figure out whatever this issue is. Yeah. Whether I have to like come off of the tour or whatever it is, so that was the only thing that probably could have been a thing where it was like, oh, okay, I guess this is literally what am I supposed to do about this? There's nothing I can do.
And here I was to scoop you up.
Oh gosh. I had so much respect for the way that he told me, the way that he handled it, how transparent and honest he was with me. And I admire that immensely to this day because I know it wasn't an easy thing.
Yeah, no, I can't imagine. And we have a great relationship with them now.
Yes.
They're awesome.
Yes. Him and his husband are wonderful.
Yeah. And so that happened,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh my gosh. And then also in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, like the goalie's gone.
Ew. I don't like that phrase.
But like, you know,
that.
like the barrier is no longer there. Like she's available. I know. And it's probably not like I could have been maybe more sensitive about like, it was cool though. Cause then
Cool. Was cool.
That's not the right term. But at that point on, we got to spend the rest of tour just traveling, spending it together.
Yeah.
And being able to spend money that we had at the time, because before that we didn't really have any money to be able to do things.
Right,
so
to
be able to actually have experiences around the country with somebody that you really, really liked.
Yeah.
And, to be frank, our relationship in the beginning was very physical. It was very focused on the physical aspect, I would say.
Yeah.
Physical forward. If we're talking in like
yes.
wine turns.
Uh-huh.
And so that happened. And then once the tour ended, there definitely, I don't know about you, but for me in my head, I was like, okay, was this just a showmance and just like a relationship that we had during the show, but then we go back to our normal lives and, go about our day?
Yeah.
Or is this something more?
Yeah, totally. And I anticipated that it would not necessarily continue once we got back to New York. Even though I really liked you as a person beyond the physical aspect. I really like that. The physical aspect would have never happened if I didn't also enjoy you as a human and your personality. That's just not how I am. So I wouldn't have been as attracted to you if I didn't love your personality. So I was just like, there's no way that the person who I like numb my pain with from my husband coming out as gay, there's no way this is going to be the person that I end up with. That would be absolutely ludicrous.
The rebound.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. And those were some of my thoughts too, of just being like, am I just a rebound? Or is this actually real?
Right.
But we were like, well, let's see what happens when we go back to New York.
Yeah.
And so we came back to New York and we kept it going. And then I did a very fun thing and decided that I wanted to not do anything physical to see like what this relationship was like. And basically was like, hey, like I don't want to have sex. I don't want to do anything other than basically kiss until we get married, if that's in our future. And how'd that make you feel?
Imagine as a woman, like your long-term partner who you've been with, you were married to for years, has basically been like, the only thing about you that I don't like is everything that's physical about you.
Right.
Like, love you as a person so much, want to be your best friend, don't love you physically. Or it's not that he said that. That's just what I understood.
Yeah.
And then to have the next person that you're with who was sort of like, that's where I could go off on this tangent, but like I was just getting my value from the wrong place. Sure. So I was taking a lot of my value and like my self-validation from the physical aspect of our relationship. Cause I was like, oh, well, if I'm desirable to you, then that means I'm worth something. So then when you didn't want that anymore, then I went back to feeling like I was unworthy. And so then I was like, well, great. Now this person doesn't want anything to do with me physically either. Fantastic. So there definitely is something lacking in the physical, in me when it comes to like my looks and how attractive I am.
And for me, I just wanted to see what our relationship would be like without that aspect, because that was such a main aspect to our relationship, the driving force in the beginning of our relationship, where I was like, well, if I'm going to be with this person, I want to know what this relationship is without that.
Right.
So that
Which is
when
totally fair.
that aspect isn't always there
Yeah.
in a relationship, how is our relationship?
Yeah.
I also had a little bit of guilt around just like sex before marriage.
Yeah.
Because being a Christian and the way I was brought up and so I think that definitely played a part.
Of course.
In it for sure.
Yeah.
So from that point on,
yeah,
that was a pretty rough patch in our relationship. In fact, we broke up for 24 hours.
We did.
We broke up.
Break up for 24 hours.
She was off on the Elf tour. She booked another tour. She did the Elf tour. The cast and her, she was on we
had our Christmas party on a boat.
And there were some alcoholic beverages involved.
Some drinks.
And so
that
decided
happened.
to FaceTime when she had a little bit of encouragement.
Well, I didn't FaceTime with the purpose of breaking up.
Well, I know that I was just saying that played a part in it. Cause then we had a conversation.
It was also like very close to Christmas. If not like actual Christmas. Maybe it was the day after Christmas or something.
Yeah. And I was in my own kind of dumb pattern where I was in my head. So yeah, I was definitely I'll be the cause, I'll take that. I was part of the cause too, where I was in my head saying this, and this was a pattern of mine as well that I needed to break, and kind of like this never ending self-fulfilling prophecy that I would do on myself, which I think is common in guys. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I was in my head thinking, well, what if there's someone even better? What if there's someone even more perfect? What if there's someone, and I was playing that game with myself, and I did that. That was a pattern in my life that I was doing. And so I was self-sabotaging our relationship.
Sure.
Because I was in my own head thinking that, well, there could be somebody that, checks all the boxes. And it's just it's an insecurity thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's that destination oriented kind of mentality.
But it was also always when you got close to being like, oh, I could actually have a real relationship with this person.
Yeah, for sure. It was a commitment issue too, of being scared of commitment, scared of like, well, then I'm going to be tied down.
Everyone else is no longer a possibility.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I have to like commit to this one person.
Yeah.
And that was scary to me, I think.
Yeah.
So we were on a FaceTime.
Yeah.
We talk about,
I don't even remember how it got to where it got.
Basically I was like, oh, if you don't know if we're going to get, you don't know the next time you want to get married, maybe I'm just a rebound. I'm just saying all these things to try to get out of it, basically.
Absolute nonsense. Like whenever is a guy like, oh, you don't want to get married anytime soon? That's scary. Like, that's the opposite of that, It was just so funny. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you're barely committed to me, and you're talking about marriage and how the fact that I don't want to get married soon is making you want to break up. This makes no sense to me.
Yeah. Whoopsie doopsie. So then you're like, well, then we should just end it. And then we were both crying a lot.
Yeah,
and we broke up.
I do remember that.
Then the next morning you texted me and was like, hey, can we just hold off on the whole like ending it thing until we can actually like talk in person
yeah,
about
at least
this?
let's break up in person if we're going to.
So then the tour ended, we get together. And this was the time, this is around the time where we got connected to mentors and some very influential people in our life, mentors and counselors that totally saved our relationship.
Yes.
And saved our marriage before we even got married.
Yes.
I totally think that, because we would have just continued in our patterns that we were
100%
operating in.
Yeah, we wouldn't have had like someone from the outside looking in to be like, hey, this is like to help us see things that we didn't know we were doing, or like point out the ways that we were experiencing the world that weren't necessarily true.
Yeah.
Because for me, like I was so against the no physical stuff.
Right.
Because that's where I had been pulling my value, number one, and the way that I was interpreting why you wanted to make that choice, why you were making that choice, you know, whereas you weren't making that choice because you weren't attracted to me.
Right.
You were making that choice so you could see the depth, how deep our relationship could be without that.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting how we don't experience the world through the lens of truth most of the time. We experience circumstances or what's happening to us or the people around us based upon the image that we have of ourselves. And I had a very poor self-image at the time. So the way I was taking what you were doing was I was taking it through the lens of my poor self-image. I wasn't taking it through the lens of truth. And I would have never seen that had I not had someone, a third party, illuminate to me that my self-image was actually in the trash. Because I thought I was a super confident person.
Right.
I didn't know I didn't know I had a terrible self-image.
Yeah. I thought I was a super confident person. And I think I was in a lot of aspects, but I didn't realize how much insecurity I actually had around a lot of different areas in my life. And so that's where, I mean, we're huge advocates of counseling.
Major.
Or at the very least, just finding people that people that is like, whether it's community, mentorship, just people that have the relationship you want or the finances you want, or the area in the areas that you actually want to get further ahead in or make progress in, like find somebody that has a really healthy, great relationship that's willing to help you out and maybe fill some gaps. Yeah. Because there was definitely some gaps that we we were missing that we were blind to. Yeah. Because we were like close inside of ourselves, and we needed somebody from the outside to see that, like, hey, your ship that you're in has these holes in it. And like you're on the inside, you're sinking and you don't see the holes because you're on the inside, you're so close to each other. Yeah. And so that was major. And then we went on straight up purity covenant.
Yes, we did.
Where we literally did not do anything other than peck on the cheek. No, not cheek. Peck on the lips. But I'm serious when I say peck. I mean, it was like it was annoying. We in the beginning, she wanted to like make out. Yeah. And we did. And then I would have to like get, tight-lipped. Yeah, literally like a little...
The worst, the most unsatisfying kiss. Good night.
If we started making out...
Oh, yeah, of course.
It would lead.
I know.
Come on.
I know. And we had done the like you said you wanted to do that, and I was pretty not about it. No. So then I would push the boundaries and like sort of make you fall off of what you had said you were going to commit to. Yeah.
You did.
And...
So then I was like, okay, we like literally can't make out, or else it leads to things, to heat.
Things,
it gets warm. It gets warm. And so we literally just pecked on the lips. Yeah. And that was it for 3 years.
3.5 years.
3.5 years. And 2 of those years, we made the decision to live together and sleep in the same bed. Yeah. Why? I wouldn't recommend it.
Because we live in New York.
Because we live in New York and we wanted to save money. Yeah. And so for 2 of those years, it was 6 of us in a 4-bedroom. Yep. For 2 years. Yep. Well, for 4 years, but 2 of those years that we weren't married. And we slept in the same bed. Yep. We didn't have to like put a wall up or anything even. No. We just like...
Well, because the reason why is because then... we were committed to what we were doing. Right. I was not committed before because I was trying to push you to not commit. And then you said something, do you remember like what you, like, cause you were like, no, I have to follow through with this because I have to show. Yeah. So I think that's really powerful.
Yeah. Cause in my head, if I can prove to you that I couldn't commit to abstaining physicality from you for this portion of time when I said we would commit to it, then how would I prove to you that I could do that with somebody else? Sure. Like in our relationship.
Just not be controlled
and
by
not just like, and not be controlled by my urges. Yeah. And so if I felt like if I continued to not stand firm in the conviction of what we believed in this, then I would just prove to you, well, what's going to stop him from acting on his urges in a different scenario when our relationship maybe isn't going so hot.
Yeah.
And so that was part of it too, was like proving to you, but also proving to myself, to be honest.
Of course.
I wanted to prove to myself that I could do that and show that I'm really serious about this.
Right.
And it was the best decision in my opinion, I think it was the best decision that we've made. One of the best decisions we made in our relationship.
Yeah, I would agree. And the reason why I eventually got committed to it was because I had a third party who was like, this is why you do this. This is why you do this. No one ever really told me why, so I didn't understand why. But once I understood why, I was like, great, I want the fruit that will come from that. I want the fruit of a deeply emotionally intimate relationship that will come from having to fill where you would be intimate physically with something that would, where we'd have to be intimate emotionally instead, so that we could feel like we were more than just like buds.
Right. Well, I would also actually. Well, what were you about to say?
I was just going to say another thing that I think was very unifying for us around that time was, you know, we also had the opportunity to go into business together. Yeah. So going into business together allowed us to have conversations that we weren't having before. To have conversations about the vision we had for our life, about what we wanted ultimately for the impact we were having on the world around us, the kind of lifestyle we wanted to create for our future family. You know, because if we weren't on the same page about those things, it would have made no sense for us to be together long term. But most people never have those conversations because society doesn't teach that you should talk about what do you want your life to look like in 10 years with your partner. Mm-hmm. Because if you have very different visions for your life, I'm married to you, and we have a shared vision for our life. So I think it would be, if someone is in a dating scenario, I think the most important thing they could do is have a conversation about, hey, what's the vision that you have for your life?
Have similar ambition levels. And that's that's what I'm talking about. All different ranges. Right. So like if you're somebody who has high ambition, have huge dreams, has a huge vision for your life, and you're with somebody that doesn't. Like I'm not trying to like
neither is right or wrong.
Yeah, it's not right or wrong either way. I'm just saying that you're gonna end up resenting each other.
Yes.
In my opinion.
Yes.
Because this person's gonna resent you for always wanting to do more and more and more, and not being not being complacent and content with our life, and not being enough, and wanting to just relax. And the other person is going to be like, why, resentful of that person not wanting to do more with their life. Yeah. And so I think that's big, like having a similar ambition level at whatever level that is.
Yes.
And a common vision for your life. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. But having those conversations was another thing that I think really unified our relationship and made us see, oh, we could really, well, for me, and I'll speak for me, that for me was like, oh, I could really build a life with this person because he wants to do things and he wants to like impact people on a huge scale, and he wants to build a life that is unusual in a good way. And so when I saw that was exciting to me. It's exciting to be in partnership with someone who has that kind of vision for their life. And so I think that having those conversations and being around people who were inspiring us to have those conversations was also hugely unifying for our relationship.
For sure. So we get engaged.
Yes. In
2018. Mm-hmm. This is how the day went.
Proposal day.
The proposal day. We started off with doing a spa day. We did like infrared saunas, and we got donuts. Infrared saunas.
Oh yeah, we did get donuts.
Yes. Infrared saunas. Mm-hmm. And then we went to church. And at the time we went to Hillsong, and at the time they had
the metal detectors.
Metal detectors, and I had the freaking ring in my pocket. And so I started like sweating profusely. And luckily you went first. So I went and I showed the worker. I was like, I like pulled it out of my pocket and I showed her. I was like, and she was like, oh, just go. And so then I put it back in my pocket and ran through. And luckily you didn't notice.
No, I didn't see any of that.
Oh my gosh, that was stressful for sure.
Yeah.
Because it was like, it's already burning a hole in my pocket like throughout the day, but that, especially having to pull it out. Mm-hmm. So that happened, went to church. And then after that, we we walked through Washington Square Park to go to a movie. We were going to go to A Star is Born that I booked. I booked Star is Born. Well, I got his tickets for that. So we walked across Washington Square Park, and in the middle of Washington Square Park was a guy who was playing the piano and was playing like Mozart and stuff.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, you two, like come and lay underneath.
He was having different people lay underneath for each song that he would play.
Yeah.
Because he was like, the sound underneath the piano is different than if you're like when you're just out.
Right.
So then
we laid under there, and he played Claire de Lune, and it was, I like almost teared up. It was like so beautiful. It was so beautiful.
Yeah, and that was totally impromptu.
So yeah, that's
like one of my favorite things about New York.
Yeah.
Because you just never know what you're going to come upon.
No.
And
either that or like slipping on throw up.
I knew you were going to say something negative. Don't do that. New York's amazing.
It is. I love New York. I love New York. And so then we went to A Star is Born, which was a total upper. It's a great movie, but
very good.
Boy, it's sad. And then after that, we went to a really nice Italian restaurant where the basement was like a wine cellar, but also looked kind of like a pirate ship. Yeah. And it was just so cool and romantic.
It was very cool.
And did you think at that place where I was going to propose?
I kind of thought you were going to propose to me at dinner, but I was also kind of like, he doesn't really seem like the proposing at dinner type. So I was like, I would be kind of surprised if he did, but I thought he was going to propose to me today because I had accidentally seen a text message.
This is so annoying.
Of something, and it just said like, it's happening, or like it's happening October 28th, I think is what the text said.
Yeah,
That's the
I
only
didn't
thing
say
I saw. Right.
I was going to get, but like I said that.
I had kind of forgotten about that text until we got to dinner. And then I was like, oh, what was that about?
Looking over my shoulder, reading my texts.
And then it was totally an accident. But then I was like, I really don't think he's a propose at dinner type. So it must not be today.
No.
He must have been talking about something else. Maybe something else that we
need
did.
A little flair.
Yeah.
So we head on home. Yeah. And at the time we were living again with 4 roommates. Yep. So it was 6 of us. And during our time out, I was having our roommates set up the entire apartment where I put flower petals everywhere, put candles in like a pathway. And then up on the wall, we have we live in Brooklyn. And so there's always like brick in a lot of apartments in Brooklyn. And
not this one.
Well, not this one, but in the one that we lived in, and they strung up. Well, I printed out, and they strung up
tons of pictures
of us from basically the tour, mostly from the tour, and just from our life and just different places we were just in our life
together.
Then I had a message that I typed out.
Yeah, a letter
that I hung in the middle. The path like led it to that part. So then she walks down the aisle and reads the letter. And as she's reading the letter, I go down on my knee, and she turns around and I propose.
Clearly I said yes. And
she kicked over one of the candles. It lit up the place. And so we're down 4 friends. It was just a really sad ending to that kitty. No, it was magical and beautiful.
Goodness gracious. But it was perfect. And then our friends, and then our roommates popped out.
Yeah, they were in their own. So as this was happening, they were in their rooms, like with the door shut, basically just waiting for me to say like, she said yes. Yeah. And then they came out and popped champagne, and it was like, woo! It was so much fun.
It was really fun.
It was really great. That whole time in that apartment was like something else.
It was.
And we did it during COVID. We were in that apartment during COVID, which in New York, COVID, it meant like lockdown. Like you are not going anywhere. And so we had a lot of fun.
We did.
So then we got engaged.
Yep.
Time passes.
Yeah.
I don't know what happens between engagement. I mean, anything
we planned our wedding.
Significance?
Not really.
Yeah. We had a long engagement. We had about 2 years. We were planning on like a 2-year engagement. Yes, I know. Why would we want to wait 2 more years to not
it was just
have sex,
it was like where we ended up wanting to get married, and that just is
we
like,
also wanted
like
to save money. So that happened, and we had the date, and it was November of 2020. Then we got engaged in 18 and we're like, oh my gosh, it's going to be amazing. We planned it all out. We're not stressed at all about our wedding. Not a single portion of it, because we had a long time to kind of plan for everything.
Yeah.
So we just like got everything planned out and it was good. And then COVID happens in March and everything shuts down.
All the people who were having to like move their summer weddings, I was like, oh, these poor people that had to move their weddings. Like, thank goodness ours is in November. We don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, thank God. And then September happened. So then,
By
August
the time
comes.
it was September, we were like,
oh,
I think we're gonna
have to move this.
Yeah, we're gonna have to.
So then we moved it to May. But our dad, yikes.
We're not siblings.
Here comes the rumors. We're not siblings. We took a DNA test. We are not siblings.
But we're not siblings.
No, we aren't. Very much. Like, her parents live in Kansas. Mine live in Wisconsin.
Your parents know a lot about their genealogy.
It's true.
So
your parents are nowhere in there.
No.
We just happen to look a lot alike, which I guess makes us full of ourselves.
I don't know.
I don't know what that means. So anyway.
My dad
was always going to marry us.
Yeah.
And so what we ended up doing instead is we went to my place in Wisconsin. We live on a farm in the country. It's beautiful. And we just legally got married there with her parents. Her parents came, and it was just her parents, my parents, and it was just very intimate and beautiful. Yeah. And we got legally married so we could start our life, aka have sex.
That's
and
not
then
why we did it.
No, it's not why. And then we had our wedding in May of 2021, which was the best.
Yeah, it was so fun.
It was so fun. We did that here in New York, Brooklyn Winery. Shout out to Brooklyn Winery.
Shout out to Brooklyn Winery.
They
so
do
good. They know what they're doing.
Amazing weddings.
They know what they're doing.
So the next part of our journey, March of 2023, we got pregnant. And that was like the next step in our journey of like, okay, this is the next step. And then 8 weeks in, she miscarried. And then we went through that process. And you never think that you're going to be, I don't know, you know how common it is, which does help you feel like you're not alone, but it's still hard to go through.
It doesn't make it any easier.
It doesn't make it any easier. And you don't expect your first one to be it, I guess. I don't know why, but I was just like, wasn't expecting it.
You don't expect it to be part of your story.
Right.
You know, I don't know. I'm a person who always has, I think it's a good thing that I always have very, very high positive expectation for what's going to happen in my life. Yeah. Like, I always know that God's going to do great things in our life. And so I had the same expectation with the pregnancy. Right. And I still have that expectation. It's just like what his timing is his timing, and
everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, things happen. But it was very unexpected.
Did you ever feel like any like anger or resentment or anything like to God or anything?
No, I didn't. That's something that I was actually listening to Joyce Meyer today, and she was talking about like developing your friendship and your relationship with God to a place where no matter what happens in your life, you don't ever default to like, but does God actually love me? Like, why is God doing this to me? You know, because you have the understanding like God is not doing this to you. Things happen. We live in a world that's filled with hurt and brokenness, and that's just what happens. But in anything, in my brother passing away, in my first marriage going the way that it did, in the miscarriage, like, I haven't ever been angry at God or had the thought that he wasn't going to turn it into something positive on the other side. Right. Or that he wasn't going to use me to help someone else who was going through something that I'd been through, or who was, you know, whatever, who we had a shared experience with. Yeah. So I always had that expectation. And no, I didn't have anger or resentment. Was I very sad and heartbroken? Absolutely. But I wasn't angry and I wasn't resentful. I felt guilty. Like, I didn't feel well when I was pregnant. And I hated that, because I've been very blessed with having like good health in my life. My body's always functioned the way that I have wanted it to. I've never been held back physically. So
you've also worked really hard too. Like, you're very disciplined in that area when it comes to your health.
Yeah. Thanks, babe. Appreciate that. But yeah, so when I had something that was holding me back physically, because I didn't feel well, every night I felt very nauseous, and I wasn't able to work out the way I was used to. I wasn't able to be productive the way I was used to being productive. And so I felt like I was just like a bump on a log. And I do not function well in that feeling at all. I get very frustrated and it brings me down, probably more than almost anything else. So I felt guilty. Then when we lost the baby, I felt very guilty about how I had been like annoyed by feeling that way, and was like, well, maybe if I wouldn't have been annoyed, that wouldn't have happened. You know,
Interesting.
Maybe if I would have been more grateful, but I was grateful, but it was also difficult. You know, and just to, I don't know, I've always been like kind of freaked out by pregnancy and childbirth. So, then I just went into kind of like a guilt spiral about how I sort of being annoyed with the way I was feeling when I was pregnant. Like I took it for granted. So then that was like a part of what I had to process with my grief and all of that as well. And again, counseling, hallelujah, thank God.
Yeah, for
for
real.
that. Because that's how I even realized that I was dealing with guilt, was through like talking things out with the counselor, who could be like, you have guilt. And that's coming from the enemy. Any if you feel guilty about anything related to this, that's coming from the enemy.
He's a tricky one.
Yeah.
He's a tricky one. Even though like, because you are somebody who operates it's just operating in a place of like everything happens for you as opposed to you.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like it's either a lot of people, it's one way or the other way. It's very few that are kind of in between. It's like people that kind of go about their life and operate in a, like, this is tough and this is a really tough season that we're going through and this sucks. But I just believe that this is happening for a reason. On the other side of this is going to come a lot of growth, or this is happening because I'm meant to impact somebody else that's about to go through this or is going through this, that I'm going to be able to speak from a point of experience that can actually help this person go through this and impact this person.
Yeah. And what am I meant to learn through this?
So it's like you either operate in that way or you operate in like, this always happens. This just happens again. Here it is.
Yeah.
I just like everything bad happens to me.
Yeah.
And that's the victim kind of side of things. And I've played that side, but it just never gets you anywhere.
No, it doesn't.
The victim mentality is
like the self-pity. Self-pity is also such like I think it feels small. But when you start to repeat that self-pitying pattern, I feel like that's a stronghold that gets in there, where the enemy is like, ooh, this is where I can get at this person, make them feel bad for themselves all the time. And that everything is just like you were saying, happening to them. And when you start to think that way, that's why we have to take our thoughts captive.
Yeah.
And be like, what is this thought? This is a lie. This thought is a lie. And literally like rebuke our thoughts out loud. That's what I had to do during in many hard times that I've had in and with the miscarriage, is being like, anytime I had those guilty thoughts, being like out loud, this is not from God. Like, this is from the enemy and I rebuke it and I want nothing to do with it. So we have to think about what we think about.
Well, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because you're continually attracting more and more of that because that's the lens that you're seeing everything is like, this always happens to me.
Yeah.
Like nothing ever goes well for me.
Yeah.
And then you look for that and you look for like your brain is processing everything as like, what evidence can I give myself to prove that this is true about me?
Even in the good things that are happening.
Yeah. You don't, well, it doesn't even see it, or you don't even see it, or you don't even notice it.
Yeah.
Or you see like a side of like, well, that only happened because, and you're like giving
why something
justification
good happened in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of like practice and time, especially if that's the pattern that you've been thinking in for a long time.
It's a hard pattern to break.
And so it just like, it's rewiring.
It takes work. It takes a lot of work
to
rewire the way that you think. If you have those grooves in your brain that you've really grooved in there for years and years. I have things like that. Even though I trend positive, like I have things like that where I have to be like, stop thinking about this way, quit it.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
Yeah. Like, I do have a dumpy.
You do have a huge behind.
Yes.
Yeah. Stop telling yourself that
dump
you
truck.
don't.
I do. I'm not going to tell myself anymore. No more bad self-talk around that.
My peach is growing. My peach is growing with every lunge.
Every lunge gives me another inch. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe. It helps us out a lot, helps out the algorithm. If you think this could help somebody, forward it to them. If you don't think it would help anybody, then don't do anything at all.
Yeah, just move along.
Yeah, move along. You scroll up. You don't have to say anything. Don't, there's no point in saying anything mean. And we like to end our podcast by saying goodbye. I think
I don't know.
there's some dissonance in there.
There was definitely some dissonance in
One
there.
of these times we're
Why'd you go so high?
gonna get a harmony going.